Good afternoon everyone and welcome to Beardychiel's Knitting Banter, episode 14. Strangely titled Monogamous Knitting? Not. I am John Glenn, also known as Beardychiel, and I'd like to offer a wonderful welcome to anyone who's watching this episode. If you're a new viewer, hello. I hope you enjoy what you see. If you're a returning viewer, it's lovely to have you back. As I said, I am John Glenn, known as Beardychiel, and you will find me as Beardychiel on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Ravelry. And if you're looking for me on email, it's beardychiel@gmail.com. So that does the basic introduction. Yeah, that does the basic introduction. Is there anything else I need to say? Oh yes, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. And if you don't want to miss anything, hit the subscribe button. They'll both come up in the last couple of seconds of the video if you're watching all the way to the end. YouTube popped up last episode before saying if you want to remind folk, here's a couple of buttons you can add on at the end that'll do that for you. So it's a free service, why not use it? Moving over, we're back to two cameras today, in case you hadn't guessed, and I'm getting confused already. Round up, what's the world been up to since I last settled down to podcast? Well, it's not been an incredibly busy, well that's not true, it's been an incredibly busy time, but it's not been an incredibly unusual time. There's been no trips away to Orkney or anywhere else wildly exciting. I have been here at home working away. What have I been doing? I've been knitting, primarily knitting, and some work in the background for Perth Festival of Yarn, adding vendors to the website, having online meetings with Eva Christie, our director, and Tracy from Lag & Felt Studio, who's also helping out behind the scenes. And it has been really good fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's something which I can do without any ill effects on me health-wise, which is absolutely wonderful. How do I know that that's the case? Well, as always, Ian, my grandson, who's 7, joins us on a Friday night for a sleepover, and we spend Saturday together while his mum is at work. And this Saturday, just past, I should say that today is Monday the Bloomth. Hang on, let's have a wee look. See if I can remember. Phone, tell me, what is today's date? Today is, where are we? Monday the 15th of May. So, Monday the 15th of May, last Saturday we went out, and in the morning, rather than have boredom set in for the poor lad, I said to him, what do you want to do? He said, can we go swimming? So off he and I went to our local swimming pool, which left Janet peace and tranquility to have a tidy up around the house that she wanted. And that's normally a good way of passing time because there's not a massive physical energy expenditure for me. There's a very large energy expenditure for the 7-year-old, which is exactly what he needs. And it's a nice relaxing way to spend an hour or so. Sadly, on the Friday night we had found the swimming goggles, which meant that the time spent in the pool was more energetic than normal. He had a whale of a time and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And of course I was spending a lot of time below the water at his behest and a lot of time on top of the water, having splash fights because with the goggles on, his eyes don't get stung by the water. So that was fine. We came home, picked Janet up, had a quick bite of lunch, and then because it was a lovely dryish day, not too hot, we thought we would do some tidying up around the house and garden. Now the windows have been needing a wash for quite a while. But unfortunately I don't have the energy to do a massive purging wash. And I was thinking, why bother? I actually own a jet wash. So we went into the shed, we found the jet washer, connected it to the hose and to the electricity, and between grandson and I, we power washed the windows. Now, as you can see, I'm sitting in the conservatory, so there's a fair amount of window space here, but there's not a lot of energy expenditure using a jet washer, one would think. So we worked our way around the house and we jet washed every window, and they got a bit of a clean, and the frames got a clean, and the gutters and fascias and soffits got a clean. Seemed absolutely fine. We even jet washed some of the patio and some of the path. Him doing a bit, me doing a bit, him doing a bit, me doing a bit. The afternoon passed really quickly. At 5 o'clock I could barely stand. To say I was flat as a pancake is an understatement. I just did too much in one day and left myself completely horizontal. I lost most of Sunday to just being complete lethargy and agony from the knee down on both legs. The arthritis in my feet was playing up big time. But hey, it was a fun day, and I have a really pleasant looking back patio. It looks really clean and lovely. So that was that. All well and good, happy, relaxed, and on to Monday. We are about to have a perfectly normal day today. I'm going to get this podcast done and out of the way, and then I'm settling down in front of my machine, my PC, not specifically for the editing, but because I have a pile of things which, having discussed with Eva, I need to do to help bring up the vendors' profiles for Perth Festival of Yarn, get some more advertising out on the people who are teaching the classes, and we'll come to that later on in the podcast. And that really is the roundup of what's been happening. That and my usual round of knitting and watching podcasts, which will also come up later in this episode, so we'll come back to it. In the meantime, I'm back to you. Camera number 1, works in progress. Now, works in progress is going to change slightly this time, because I did record some of my works in progress sitting in the comfy chair with a GoPro on as a head cam, as usual, and I gibbered away in the background about it, and it was absolutely wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as I always do. Battery went flat, switched the camera off, and there hasn't been an opportunity to sit in the comfy chair with the camera on and knit since. So the last bits of work in progress are actually sitting here with me today. Well, one of them I've just realised I've left sitting beside my chair, but I'll tell you about it. The one that's sitting beside my chair is the Travelling Texture shawl. Now, the Travelling Texture shawl, you all probably know, I started on the way to Edinburgh Yarn Fest, and it has come on apace. It's fingering or 4-ply weight yarn, knitted on 2.75mm needles, so small stitch definition, corner up design, exploring textures, both stitch textures and lace textures, and it's coming on a pace. We are more than 2/3 of the way through it. We're into the final set of decreases, and I'm absolutely delighted with that. And I have been showing you it as it started to develop, but I'm not going to show you it from here on in, because it has been snaffled by my friend Eva Christie as one of the patterns for the pattern brochure that's coming out in Perth Festival of Yarn 2017, and I am really looking forward to having that as a submission there. I did say that I would finish it off, write the pattern. I have a couple of test knitters lined up for it, ready to go. My tech editor is sitting, waiting, and hopefully all of that will get done and get to Eva in the next week or two, ready for her including it in the bit of publication that's coming. In fact, one of my test knitters spent Saturday night on Messenger with me discussing yarn options, which was really quite good fun. So that's that one. The next one is something I had been promising myself I would start since November. And this is, I'll show you. It's here. Do you remember this lovely cone? This is a cone which I picked up from King Craig Fabrics in Brora. And it's really, really nice. And yes, I'm knitting on flat, long needles for a change. And what I'm knitting is a waistcoat. But this time, it's not in my size. It's what would be a UK ladies size 14, which is about a 30-inch bust. And I've arranged this in such a way that the waistcoat, as I finish the design work and finish the prototype, can have one of three lengths. It can be produced as a short shrug. It can be produced as a waist length waistcoat, or just short of waist length, or it can be taken just past waist length, because this section of the body can be extended to suit the needs of any particular body, because we all know that our sort of waist to underarm length is fairly average, but some people like things a bit on the neat side, some people like them a bit on the long side compared to average, so that's that. The changing colour that's going in here is a ball of Drops Delight, 75 wool, 25 nylon, and just for prototyping, I liked the colours that were in here. The purples, the greens, the browns, the sort of almost amber yellow I thought would go really well with the beige, and it's knitting up really nicely. It's produced a really nice fabric. I like the way it feels. I like the dropped point there. That's it. When something's on the needles, it just has to curl up. So I'm happy with this so far. So this work in progress is going on a little bit at a time. Travelling Textures is getting most of the time, and this is getting a little bit of the time, but it's fun. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. The lamb's wool from King Craig is lovely to work with. It's a really nice yarn. I did, because I was a bit unsure of how it would knit up tension wise, I did knit a little swatch of the beige just for myself, which is unusual for me. I don't tend to swatch. And it came out just about the same as every other sort of 4-ply that I looked at. I'm knitting it on 3mm needles. The needles are... Here's an interesting one. The needles are... Oh heavens. The needles are upside down, that's what they are. The needles are Stratnoid patent number, and I can't read the patent number, it's just about finished, or just about vanished. They are 3.25mm or Old Imperial size 10s. This is a pair of needles which were my grandmother's. They are getting on for they could be as old as me, if not even older, I don't know. That just goes to show that there are some things in life which don't wear out, unlike me. So that was that work in progress. I've told you a little bit about travelling textures, and I'll pass you over to myself in the comfy chair for the next bit.
Well, works in progress continuing on apace. You caught me right in the middle of a work in progress today, because I have just finished and taken off the needles this, one half of the adult part of mother and baby socks, or mama and baby socks, and I'm about to put the second one on the needles. So I thought, why not show you how the whole thing starts off. I'm quite happy with this so far. It's a nice pattern. It's going to go out for test knitting shortly, because as I've been working on this sock, I've been writing the pattern. So the pattern's written, it's ready to go. It's just a case of knitting sock number 2 to complete the pair. So let's make a start. I have with me my 2.5mm Knit Pro Symphonies, which is what we're going to be using today. I'm going to drop some yarn over finger and thumb. I'm going to keep a space between them because I don't want the cast on to be too tight. Unfortunately, it is easy for it to become too tight, so I like to start just by dropping down on top and creating one twist, going over the bottom needle, and that gives me my first pair. Now with that first pair, I'm going to start to build, and I want 12 pairs in total. So between the needles, over there, between the needles, over there, 3 pairs, between the needles, 4, 5, 6, and you can see that tension pulls in quite quickly. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now that leaves quite a long tail this time, and I don't mind that it leaves a long tail because I like having something to hang on to. Now in that position, I'm just going to change hands, and I am going to take my short tail to the back and hold on to it. I'm going to take out the bottom needle and I'm going to knit into the top. And the first round is purely and simply a knit round. It's just going to lock this cast on in place, establish the stockinette that I want for the toe. There's nothing weird, wonderful or difficult in it. The cable in this happened to be the only one that was free, and I think it's a 1.5 metre, but does it really matter? Not to me. As long as the pins in the end are the right size and I can do what I want, I'm not going to complain. So there we go, a nice simple knit 12. I can let go of that tail end now. Again, I'm keeping that on the bottom. Going to pull back to the other needle. Gently slide it back in there. And I'm going to knit that 12. So again, taking out the bottom needle. And this just, for me, lets me see that not only have I set this up the way I want it, but the knitted stockinette pattern that I'm expecting to see looks right. I've got quite a lot of tension that one. There we go, we're into that properly, so we can knit it. So there's 1, 2, 3. Now I find that with Judy's Magic Cast On like this, it's a nice easy start to my toe up sock. I don't mind that it takes this row to establish it. I think that's quite a good thing. Now I'm happy that I have established that first row. Just let me get this needle back in, because it does let you see the structure a little more easily when it's in place. And you can see that the stocking stitch is sitting there quite nicely, ready to go. So we're going to do our first set of increases. And we are going to knit 1. And then we're going to pick up the loop between the two. And I'm just going to transfer it to the other side. And I want to knit into the back of this one, because I want a left leaning leg. I'm going to knit to the end, to the last stitch. Now I find using this method of creating my toe-ups, it gives a really nice finish. This time I'm going to pick up from the back, and I'm going to knit into the front of the stitch to create a right leaning leg. And knit 1. And that finishes that bit for me. I'm going to swap it over to the other side. Now at this stage, it's nice and easy to tell if you stop and come back to it where your beginning is, because that tail is still sitting there for you. As you work on, that can become more difficult to see. So when I pop this sock out the right way, I'll just sit that on there. I want to knit into the back to get my left leaning stitch. I tend to just pop that through to the front and use it as a big stitch marker, so that I know that I have a tail sticking out of the side of the sock on magic loop, which is my 0 or my starting side. That means that I only ever have that one thread. I don't have an extra stitch marker involved at this stage. Going in from behind, and of course, as I said before, knitting into the front of the stitch to create the twist that I need to close up that little loop. And oh, that was clever. Bit too much tension there. That's better. Create that right leaning leg that's going to close up the little loop for me, so I don't get a massive hole appearing here. Now I've knitted both sides. These have to be locked in place, and you lock them in place by having a non-increasing row. So I'm quite happy with that. Now the mama and baby socks came about purely and simply because I have a niece who is expecting a baby, and my niece Megan is expecting a little girl, and I had this cotton and acrylic mix sitting in a cupboard, and I had used a little bit of the ball for decoration on a piece of baby knitwear last summer. So it wasn't a full 100 grams. I wanted to use it up. I cannot remember who the manufacturer is. I cannot remember the name of the yarn. I just know that it's cream, pink and purple, and I like it. It's really nice. It feels lovely to the touch. It was advertised as a double knitting, but it's incredibly fine, and it's knitting up in socks perfectly as if it were a fingering or 4-ply, so I don't really worry greatly about that. I'm just going to let it knit up that way and give me, it's created the effect that I want. The fabric is not inflexible. It feels quite good. Having something with a cotton content, a cotton and acrylic mix, is unusual for me. I don't tend to have a lot of those. It tends to be 100% cotton, but I reckon the cotton and acrylic mixed together would have the same effect as popping some polyamide or nylon into some wool. It's going to give a slightly more hard wearing heel and sole for me. So from that point of view, I'm hoping it's okay. Right, let's increase again this time. So we're going to pick up that loop, and of course we want to twist and get the back of the loop for knitting through. So we've got that left leaning leg. We're going to nip along to the end. Yes, so Megan found out she was having a little girl, and I thought, right, I'll knit something for her. I had just finished the vanilla baby sock pattern, and I thought, okay, I'll knit her a set of baby socks. But I realised how little yarn they actually required, and when I thought about that, I thought, do you know something? Why don't I find out? I know that Megan is just like my daughter and daughter-in-law, they all like these little trainer socks rather than a full sock. So I thought, if I'm not knitting the leg of a full sock, I don't need as much yarn, so that's good. Have I got enough left to get a set of baby socks and a set of trainer socks out of this ball? And that's how the pattern came about, or why the pattern came about. So the baby socks are knitted. I did those first, and the mama socks are the afterthought, almost. And I'm hoping that they're going to give me enough. I'm hoping I've got enough wool to get what I want out of it. Let's put it that way. Or enough yarn to get what I want out of it. The whole idea, I was thinking of that first day that you are bringing baby home, and baby's coming home normally dressed in brand new clothes, or possibly something from an older sibling which has been cherished. That isn't going to happen in this case, because the older sibling is an Oliver, and since we know that this is a first little girl arriving, then she's entitled to have something nice and fresh and new for her. And I thought the baby socks would be good. And that day when you come out of the hospital, I remember with Janet, when she had Sarah and Ali, it's a really special day for mummy as well as for baby. So why not create something which celebrates both mum and baby? So the mama and baby socks, using the same little bit of lace pattern, popped into my head. The only difference is I use the lace pattern once on the baby socks and twice on the mummy socks. The baby socks have a really plain vanilla stockinette heel because they don't need anything else. We're on to a sort of consolidating round now. We've just finished the increase and we are just locking those increases in place. As I was saying, yeah, so the pattern is an easily transferable pattern. It's a 4-stitch pattern, which on a 64-stitch sock lets you position it quite easily, because 2 sets of 4 is 8, 4 eighths is 32, so you know that you're going to knit an 8, a 4, an 8, a 4, an 8, and you're going to get a nice symmetrical spread of that pattern. If you want to change sizes, you add or subtract from the 8s on the outside, and you keep the 8 in the centre constant, and that way your pattern section doesn't change as you change size of sock, because I know some people like a 60 stitch sock and some people like a 68 stitch sock. So that flexibility is there for people. I'm quite happy with that. The heel on the mother and baby sock has got some cushioning, some rib detail worked into it to create a cushion panel on the back. It's not a slip stitch heel. Right, so I've now established that, and it's now starting to show the pattern that I want. So because of that, as I said before, I'm going to drop that out at the 0 point for myself, and I'm going to move on to normal magic loop knitting. So because I'm knitting, my yarn is going up and over the back needle, and the back needle is now coming out to go into the front, and that was just 2 rounds of increases to establish everything, and I'm quite happy to swap over now and get the whole thing to run as it should in magic loop. So there we are, into the back of that one, knit to the last stitch. Now again, depending on who you are, or whether you have long toes, short toes, narrow feet, long, wide feet, you can change the structure of the toe on these quite happily. I start with 12, some people might want to start with 16, as long as you end up at 32, it does not matter. As long as you end up with the right number of stitches, the only thing you're then going to change is the amount of pattern that you knit to get the foot length that you want. Now, because these socks are being knitted in a very personal way to an individual foot length, is gauge important? Is the tension important? A little. You could say it is important, a little. Personally, when you've got that amount of flexibility on width and length, hitting what people would call gauge or tension isn't quite so critical, because socks are such a personalised thing. Whether or not you go up or down a needle size, if you know that 64 stitches knitted on 2.25s with fingering weight gives you a sock that you're comfortable with, then that's the way you're going to knit them, regardless of what my pattern says. And that's exactly what I would expect of an experienced knitter. I would expect them to use their experience and adjust the pattern to make the whole thing as good a fit for them or their relative or their client or whoever or whatever. I don't have a problem with that at all. And I think with full body fitted garments, saying that you're going to hit tension, hit gauge, is quite often essential. You can't get away from that if you're working to specific tailored sizes. But where something can have flexibility, a shawl, a sock, if the person writing the pattern thinks about it and they allow for that flexibility in their writing, they think about the experience knitters might have. Socks are so personal. It's hard to say don't do something. I know that if I come across a pattern that I think is interesting and I want to knit for myself or for someone in the family, then I tend to just go ahead and knit it, making whatever minor adjustments I need to suit my knitting style. And it's just age and experience. I don't think about it. It just happens for me. And I know that it doesn't happen that easily for everyone. So from that perspective, maybe I should be a little more worried, a little more concerned that people follow a pattern to the letter and work exactly to the tension that I've used when I was making this. I don't know. What can I say? I'm just a cantankerous, twisted, carnaptious old git who does things in his own old established way, and if it doesn't suit other people, I'm awfully sorry. It's just the way I've always worked. If I'm knitting a garment and I don't have a rough idea of what I want from it, or a rough idea of what size it's going to be, if I'm planning to work with a yarn and a needle size that's completely unique, then yeah, I probably will swatch and plan from that swatch the overall sizing of a garment. But it's never any more excessive than a 4" by 4" swatch, and my 4" by 4" swatch will be knitted, and I will look at it, and I will take it off the needles, cast it off, and I will lay it flat, and I will measure it. Will I wash it? Will I dry it, stretch it, block it? No, I don't. I measure my swatches as they come off the needle, and I work from that size, because I don't want the structure of the stitches stretched, twisted, or generally messed around with. I like my stitch structure for things I design to be unstretched, unless I'm working with something that really desperately needs to be opened. Some lace work in a shawl, perhaps. I don't block by pinning things out flat unless I'm working on a very lightweight lace shawl, and then the pinning flat is actually pinning to a bed sheet, and that bed sheet is then hung in the garden, as my grandmother always did. I don't pin to rubber mats or carpets and leave to dry. So if I'm using that method, it's a bed sheet. Other than that, I will pin onto a bed sheet and then use not an iron, but just a steamer, and blow hot steam over it and leave it to cool, and let the steam lock the stitch structure in place. I find that works quite well for me, and it doesn't create flattened stitches. I find that if I pin things to the floor, I have tried it, the stitches flatten out and lose their structure for me. I just don't like the finish it gives. And I've gone completely off on a tangent for a works in progress, but hey, that's okay. Now, some folk are going to completely disagree with me, and that's perfectly okay. Each to their own. We all have our own individual ways of working, and each and every one of them should be celebrated, and we should look at everybody else's methods and we should talk about them, because even after 40 odd years of knitting, there are days that someone will say, have you tried this? And I say no, and I go home and I give it a bash, and then I think, oh, that works quite well for that project. I will keep that and I will use it again. And I encourage all of you to be like that. Stay as open in your knitting as you possibly can. Be willing to try new things. Right, one more round on this, just to establish that last, or consolidate that last set of increases, and then I think we're going to leave this project and move to something else. Now the pattern for this, as I say, has gone out to two of my test knitters. One of them, who is a complete sock fanatic, Penny Bilton, and Penny has been test knitting the sequin socks as they have appeared, and her attitude is wonderful. She's a very experienced knitter. She finds typos for me in the draft version of the pattern that she gets, so I sort out my typos, or some of my typos, before the whole thing goes off for tech editing. For me, the two things happen in tandem, because I'm using experienced knitters who will query stitch counts and things with me. So quite often my tech editor and my test knitter will send me information on the same day saying, did you mean to say, what was your intention on round or row X? And it's really, really good. It works well for me as a system. Now, as I say, when we get to the end of this round, we'll call this work in progress complete. I will leave you to it. I love the way this invisible cast on, or Judy's magic cast on, and this simple set of side increases works for me. I know that other people prefer things like a star toe just based on foot shape. I have no problems with that. That's not too wide, not too narrow, and it's coming up nicely there. Oh, don't want to pull that one. I want to pull that one. And I am happy that that will quite quickly come up to where I want it to be. Where are we now? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. We're on 20. So 12 more rows and the toe will be finished, and we'll move into the pattern. And the next time you see these, there will be a finished pair of socks. Thanks for that. Bye for now on this one. Welcome back to Works in Progress. Next project, and the next project is sequence sock number 3. And as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 repeats. We're into the 5th repeat. At the end of the 5th repeat, we will put in the heel, and then we'll have 5 repeats, I think. Yeah, 5 repeats down the foot and then the toe. Pardon me. This should have been finished by now, but unfortunately one or two other things got in the way of knitting, mainly other bits of knitting, and this project, because it's not quite essential, has sadly been stuck on a back burner. Now, I don't apologise for that. Now, what was the last thing we did there? Yep, so we are due to increase here. Or are we? No, we're not. This is just a knitting row, so we're not worrying there. Yeah, the sequence socks are coming on a pace. Sequence sock 1 and 2, the patterns are done and up. The test knitted versions looked absolutely fine. I was happy with those. Test knitters were happy. I do find that trying to create sock patterns is fun. I have a liking for small, easy repeats. Things which repeat over 3 or 4 rows. This is quite a long one for me. I mean, this is a repeat over 12 rows to complete the pattern, which, as I say, for me is unusual. The patterns that I've chosen for the sequence socks don't have any lace work in them at the moment, and the reason that they don't have any lace work in them is I find that as a man, lace work for me, well, for me, I don't really care. I would wear anything. But for an awful lot of guys, they wouldn't consider wearing anything with lace in it. So the first 3 sequence patterns have all been solid patterns. They've all been pretty unisex transferable patterns, simple repeats, nothing too masculine, nothing too feminine, fairly neutral from that perspective. Oh, and something has gone slightly awry there. I wonder why. Yes, I know why. I puddled when I should have knitted. Silly man. That's what comes with blethering when you're knitting and not paying attention. So, as I was saying, the patterns I've created so far are relatively neutral. Depending on the colours of yarn that you decide to use, they would come out as a masculine or a feminine looking sock and be absolutely fine. Being a man, the versions I'm knitting have tended to be slightly stronger colours, not a lot of pastels, and that's because I'm just a guy knitting for a guy. I must plan the next one. I said the sequin socks would be a set of 5 patterns, and this is number 3. The biggest interruption to the entire sock pattern process at the moment is shawl knitting. Now, as for this, because I've got one sock finished in this one, the actual writing of the pattern is done. Well, in notebook form, it hasn't been committed to word processing yet. So as soon as I commit it to word processing, it will go out to my test knitters, and a copy will go off for tech editing, and hopefully sequin sock number 3 will be published in a few weeks' time, just before I go off for my summer holiday. And while I'm off on my summer holidays, I'll be thinking of you guys greatly. You will get some check-ins from overseas, because I'm leaving the UK for a little while to have some sun, some pool time, and by that I mean swimming pool time, not playing pool time. So we're going to have some sun, some swimming pool time, and some knitting. Now, the knitting project while I'm away, is going to be something special. It is a piece of, I'm not going to tell you at the moment. I'll save it. I'll save it because I would like you all to be able to get access to it at the same time, and to see that it's not what you normally expect Beardychiel to publish. I'm hoping that you're all going to enjoy it when you see it. It's something which should have the flexibility to be fun for lots of age groups, and it should have the flexibility to be fun for both males and females, depending on yarn choices. There's been quite a lot of thought has gone into it, and it was planned for another purpose, but it'll become a general release item, I think. Now, I'm blethering away here, and these are things which I would normally be blethering about in the main body of the the podcast, so it means that the intersections in the other main body of the podcast are going to be a little bit shorter. I'm going to try and curtail those because I've spent the time chatting to you while I'm knitting. And you know something? I quite enjoy this bit. There's something quite cathartic about just sitting, working on your works in progress, and having the conversation that you would normally have staring at my face, because I think sitting looking at someone knitting is more interesting than looking at their face sometimes. Well, especially when I look in a mirror. So, there we go. Sequence sock number 3, last iteration before the heel turn. I look forward to getting it finished and having a pair of socks to wear myself. Having done these cuff down, yes, I have enjoyed them. It's been a nice change. Will I go back to knitting a lot of stuff cuff down? I don't know. I just don't know. I haven't decided. So, from this bit of works in progress, tatty bye.
So what have I got for you in my community section today? Well, I don't have any questions from any of you. I don't have anything to ask or answer. 1 or 2 comments after the last video went up. Absolutely fine, nothing unusual there. So that was good. 1 or 2 nice posts in the Ravelry group, particularly from Zoe, who is in Canada, who won the 500 miles giveaway. All of her things have arrived safely in Canada. She's enjoying her Gone Crafts yarn, and being me, I couldn't send just the Gone Crafts yarn, and I was in one of our local stores and they had a couple of unusual flavours of handmade Orkney fudge. Now, Orkney fudge here is really quite popular. People love it. There are a couple of recipes around for an Orkney fudge cheesecake, which is a diabetic's nightmare, but it tastes absolutely wonderful. So if you ever get the chance and you're in this part of the world and you see it in a menu, do indulge yourselves and have a little, because it's generally something which is really, really nice. So that was nice to hear. Who else was posting? My mind has gone completely blank. I should have brought my tablet in when I had them up. But there have been some nice bits, and that was absolutely good. So I consider myself to be getting off lightly, not having many questions to answer. This is something which I hope you won't let me get away with for too long. Make me work for sitting here. So what else have I been up to? Well, community-wise, nothing greatly to develop my own bit of community work. Chatting to folk online. There are some podcasters from the Edinburgh Yarn Festival Alternative Ceilidh who are still chatting on a daily basis on WhatsApp, and that's absolutely fascinating. They're talking about design, they're talking about what they're working on, they're talking about yarn acquisitions, and it's absolutely fantastic to have that dialogue just trickling through my phone on a daily basis. It's really good, and they're a lovely bunch. And apart from that, I have been sitting knitting, trying to get Travelling Textures finished, because there's a relatively large number of stitches and a relatively small needle size. It takes a bit of time to get through, which is okay. I don't have a problem with that. I have reasonably good patience, and I did think to myself, why did I choose to do it this way? But when I pick it up and I feel the way it drapes, I know why I chose that particular needle size and that type of yarn, because it does feel right for the design. So that's fine. That meant that I had lots of time sitting, needing something to fill in background noise. Well, the background noise for me generally comes from audiobooks or podcasts. And I have decided over the last little while to concentrate on some podcasts because that's good fun. Now, all of my podcasts are not necessarily watching other people talking about knitting, watching people making this type of podcast. I do watch a few of those, but I do like instructional YouTube stuff as well. So I do look at things on knitting and spinning technique. I look at things on crochet technique. So that has all been quite good. But in terms of other knitting podcasts and podcasters, for the last couple of weeks, those who have popped up as I have been working away, I will start with Eva Christie. Eva Christie Hand Knits, who I speak to on an almost daily basis because of our joint work on Perth Festival of Yarn. And in one of her podcasts recently, Eva had created a giveaway competition in her Ravelry group, asking what has happened in your last year. What have been the big points? What have been major changes for you in the last 12 months? And to help encourage people to post, I stuck in my last 12 months changes, and lo and behold, I'm one of her 2 winners. I'm absolutely chuffed. It was wonderful. To hear my name mentioned in a podcast, not in relation to something directly knitting or festival linked, was just lovely. So thank you very much, Eva. I am the lucky winner of the campsite hat pattern, and I am looking forward to it popping into my Ravelry box. I haven't looked to see if it's there today. And I'm looking forward to picking out some yarn and knitting it. That'll be really quite good fun to have something to knit which someone else has planned and which I'm going to have to wear for fun and for a nice memory. I also did some catching up with Nathan Taylor's Sock Knittition podcasts. As always, I can sit back, relax and just listen as he warbles away, and it's probably one of the most relaxing hours I spend every couple of weeks. Nathan, I find a really nice, easy person to listen to. He always has something fun to say, and that's basically it. He's a nice guy with something nice to say, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Dan and Kay Jones, the Bakery Bears. Every time I watch them, it puts a smile on my face. Grace at Babel's Travelling Yarns. Grace has such a smile and such a cheery disposition. I don't know how she manages to keep it up. Even when things don't appear to be going well, she still has a smile on her face and the most positive outlook of any of the folk I know. So Grace, you're an absolute amazing person, absolutely amazing. How you do it, I don't know, and I am delighted to count you as one of my podcasting buddies. Ellie Scandia. Well, there's a podcaster who you just get hooked. You watch I watched one podcast, and then I had to go back and see how many other podcasts there were, and I've been trying to dip back and fit in from time to time some Scandia podcasts, and Ellie has a really down to earth, a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get type presenting style, which I love. You've heard me say that before about other podcasters. One of my favourites to say that about is Helen Duff and Sprite 966, and Ellie has a similar natural, just chat away style, which I really enjoy. Anna at Yarnisty, podcasting in its infancy for Anna, and what she is producing is really nice. Over the last week or so, she has published a sock pattern which looks wonderful. I am incredibly tempted, pardon me, to maybe put it on my Christmas list as something I'll pick up later in the year, because I can think of one or two people in my family who would quite enjoy wearing that particular pattern. The only problem is, where do I fit in knitting it? I'm just going to have to switch something else off and make time, but it is nice, and I have forgotten the name, and I'll make sure it appears along the bottom while I am blabbering on here, and you'll all find it on Ravelry if you want to. And last but not least, Kirsty, my Glaswegian buddy, Little Bee. Kirsty is truly a what you see is what you get, no holds barred Glaswegian podcaster. And sometimes she is incredibly blunt and forthright, and I love it. I absolutely adore it. She is one of the most diverse crafters that I know. She sews, she knits, she dyes, she does a little bit of everything. And how she fits it all in around the fact that she does not have the best of health amazes me. It really amazes me. Kirsty, the fact that you keep going when other people would have dropped flat, you're an amazing person. Keep going, hen. Keep going. And that really is the end of my community slot. It's been a good couple of weeks. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching it. I did watch one or two. Oh, I'll tell you who else came in. I'd forgotten. Arnie and Carlos. Arnie and Carlos I do watch. I am subscribed to their channel, and as things pop in, I watch some of them, I don't watch some of them. And there was a nice one just the last couple of days on tension in Norwegian purling. Short podcast, 6-7 minutes, simple, instructional, and for ages when I've been trying Norwegian purl, I've watched several podcasts and I've seen lots of different methods of tensioning, and I've tried them all out, and I get my fingers in my yarn and a fankle when I try it. And now there's the word fankle. I don't know if there's a lot of other people use that, but hey, no matter. And I watched that video the other day and I thought, my God, that is so straightforward. Which meant I had to grab a pair of needles, a piece of scrap yarn, and give it a bash. And I have to say, gentlemen, you were spot on. It doesn't have to be complicated. And that finishes that bit for me. 3, 2, 1. Well, we're at that stage where we need to look at finished objects. Is there much in finished objects? Well, no, there are only 2. One of them you will know from the last podcast, and it's this. If you remember, I had some scrap yarn from JC Rennie from a hat which I was working on. It was for one of Sock Matician's stranded knit along. I was working on a hat using some of this 4-ply yarn, and I decided I wanted to use up all of the yarn. I didn't want any left, and I thought a little bandana or neckerchief would be just the thing, mini shawl almost. And I decided something simple, garter stitch, some holes, some simple increases, throw it around your neck, have fun. Got halfway down it and thought, do you know something? I want to change the shape slightly. I want it to point out a little. So I changed the middle and increased the number of increases at the centre there, compensated with 2 lines there to get this change in angle. I got what I wanted. Unfortunately, it created a belly which I wasn't expecting. Am I caring? No, it's using up scrap yarn. It's fun. And as little bandanas go, it's tiny, it's going to fit nicely under a jacket in the winter, like a mini cowl. It needs something to hold it So I'm thinking that there will be a couple of press studs or something thrown on the back. If you stick it on the other way round, it is just a nice wrap around for under a coat. It's just going to keep your neck warm and no more. It's not much caught for anything else. When I left it lying around, my little helper picked it up, that's the back to front, and decided that because of that little shape that it would be quite nice just draped over the head, and it would make a nice little scarf. That would be great. It would keep your ears warm. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite me. What do you think? No, I didn't think so. So I'm thinking that it needs to have a button or something stuck on the edge, and because there are these holes every 1.5 inches, I'll just find where the best place for that is, pop it on and just have a wrap around the neck, a little something to keep the wind out in the winter. The bottom edge is a 3-stitch I-cord, which I started in the last podcast, and it has gone on really nicely. I'm really happy with the way it looks. Just 3 stitches, it's a very small, very tight I-cord. Couple of increases and decreases right at the apex there to get it to turn the corner, and the rest is just straight, plain, nothing unusual. So, one little bandana, finished, and I am a happy man. This is something which has lain beside my bed for months. And I pick it up, knit a couple of rows before you go to sleep, and then put it down again. There's no rush. There was no rush to get it finished. It has just been plodding on. So I'm happy that that's done. Having been working on all of this fine yarn, I've been working with lots of fingering weight. I've been working on socks on 2.5mm or 2.25mm needles. I've been working on travelling textures on 2.75. That was on 3mm needles. The biggest I've got recently is the work in progress I showed you earlier, which is in 3.25s. I decided I wanted something which was do it in a night and it's finished. And I had a rummage in my scrap box and I found some chunky. And I produced this. And this is a little sock size project bag, knitted in chunky. The blue stuff on the bottom is some James C. Brett acrylic that was left over from God knows what. I cannot remember what I knitted in that colourway. It's just completely gone from my head, and I decided that I would knit it bottom up, so a giant Judy's Magic cast on, a set of increases which have created the sides, both ends, nice simple stocking stitch up the sides, a little cable to define the corners, and on the stocking stitch sides I thought I'll stick something halfway up, so just a little bit of rib detail in the middle, just to do something with it. As I ran out of the blue yarn, I cast it off. In fact, no, as I was about to run out of the blue yarn, I thought, will I cast it off? And then I decided, no, it actually needs something to hem the top, and something that I can attach the zip to, because it needs a zip or some pop studs. I might actually settle for actually just sticking a couple of pop studs on it. It might not need a zip. And I decided a 4-stitch I-cord would actually be fine for this, so that's what I did. Because I was running out the blue, into the scrap bag and picked up some fingering weight yarns that were reds and greens and blues, and just stranded them together and knitted the I-cord. And I just knitted along one side, and when I got to the end I knitted myself 6-7 inches of I-cord, and then picked up the other side, knitted the other side, finished off, grafted the ends together, and there we have it. One little project bag. Now, is it big enough for a pair of socks? Well, funnily enough, I brought some sock yarn here with me for stash enhancement bit, and it happily takes 1, 2, 3, 4 balls of yarn at a push. I would get 300 gram balls in there comfortably, and at 300 gram balls that is going to close without any problem at all. So a pair of socks into that, absolutely fine, no problem. Big question, do I want to line it? Does it need a lining? I don't know. The inside looks okay. It's a piece of scrap acrylic, it's nothing special, but I have to say, in terms of high speed, quick knit project bags, that was about 2 hours sitting in front of the telly, watching a movie, and then maybe another half hour for the I-cord. It filled a bit of a night one evening last week, just when I wanted things to go at a different pace. It's a long time since I've had anything knitted and chunky. It was just, the speed it whizzes up at, you forget how quickly things go on 6.5mm needles. Was it 6s? 6.5, I can't remember. I just grabbed a circular and that was about the right size and rattled it up. If anybody's wanting to try at it, the cast on at the bottom there was 30 pairs of stitches in chunky. You can improvise the increases. If anybody desperately wants this as a little pattern for themselves, give me a shout, I will write it up. I don't mind, but it was a fun project, and it was a little something for me just to help tidy up the number of projects I have lying around, and maybe having half a dozen little project bags sitting instead of 6 or 7 piles of knitting on the table beside my comfy chair would be a better idea, because Janet says I'm just too messy, and I can see her point. So those are my 2 finished objects for this fortnight. Hopefully by the time we get to the next lot there'll be something more. And that takes me into stash enhancement. Let's go over here for stash enhancement. What have I got in stash enhancement? Well, the first thing that came in was this. This came by way of my friends in the WhatsApp group, because I think it was Elliot Scandia who had posted that Norwegian yarns or Norwegian wools were having a sale, and I went on, and in their sale they had this Ask 100% Norse wool, and the price was really good. I think it was about 4 something a skein. It wasn't incredibly expensive, and I saw this forest green, and originally I was thinking white, but the white sold out and I ended up with natural, and the natural white and the forest green together are lovely. They're a really nice combination. It smells nice, it feels nice, it's wonderfully squishy, and I have to say it comes in really well. 100 grams, let's see, 315 meters. So they recommend knitting on 3 to 3.5mm needles. The reason for buying these is Patricia, P4 Chen, because I have been engrossed watching her talking about Selbstwater mittens. And I thought, if I can find some yarn that I think would be appropriate, the idea of the Selbstwater patterns, that stranded work, is fascinating. So I'm now going to go pattern hunting, and I will buy a pattern, but whether or not I knit that pattern, I haven't decided, because being the arch Scot that I am, I was actually thinking if I was to take traditional Scottish motifs of Celtic knotwork and combine them with the Selbstwater stranded style, what would the result be? So do I want something completely traditional, or do I want something Scots-Norwegian fusion? Now, since I live in Caithness, where all of the place names are Norse, because this was a major Viking colony in its day, as was Orkney, in the north-east corner of Scotland, there's that cross-heritage link between the two. So watch this space for this yarn reappearing. It will reappear as a pair of mittens, but what those mittens are going to look like, how the pattern is going to develop, could be interesting. So this is Ask Hifa 2 hand streak knitting, so hand knitting, yarn, 100% wool, absolutely lovely. If you get a chance to buy it, I would say buy it. I know that there are some people hoarding it. Who was it, Ellie, who said she was hoarding it? I can understand why now that I've actually held it. Makes perfect sense. Stash enhancement number 2 is my wife's fault. We don't need any yarn in this house. It is something we have lots of. Consequently, I don't stress over ever needing yarn. I just go into a cupboard and take something out and knit. But one of Janet's friends at work had said to her, "Can you help me? I'm expecting a baby and I would like this blanket for my baby. And I don't know how to make it, and I don't knit or anything. Would you do it for me? I know you knit." And Janet said, "Of course I'll help you." And then she looked at the pattern, and it's not a knitting pattern, it's a crochet pattern. And does Janet crochet? No, she does not. So she said, "You're going to have to teach me." Now, Janet and I spent a week trying to teach her to crochet before Christmas. At the end of that, I had more grey hair and more bald patches. She was almost on Valium, and the cat was in hiding. I'm not saying that it was stressful, but she doesn't do new experiences like that in a straightforward way. Consequently, we have been preparing for this. So she went online and she hunted for the yarn which was required and the colours that were required, and when she found what was recommended in the pattern, she thought it looked incredibly tacky and had too much acrylic in it. In fact, it had nothing but acrylic in it, and she thought, well, maybe I'll have a rummage. So she rummaged on Wool Warehouse, and she found what she wanted in the drop sale that's running at the moment, which was fine. She placed the order for the yarn she wanted, and heavens above, it came to less than £25. Those of you who use Wool Warehouse in the UK know that if you get above £25, carriage is free. Now, I could either pay a few pounds for carriage, or I could buy some extra yarn and have it delivered free of charge. It's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? You have to have extra yarn. She said, "I don't need any extra yarn. Is there anything you would like?" Well, having just started the work in progress, which is the waistcoat, and used up some of my Drops Delight, which were earmarked for a sock project, I thought I'll replace that. So I did. I got the 2 balls to replace that. And I thought, well, that's good, but it's on special offer, so it's only £1 something a ball at the moment. So, you know, Drops Delight sock yarn, 75 wool, 25 polyamide, which is nylon. This is colour number 10, Dialot 1638. It's lovely. The turquoises, the oranges, the greens, the yellows, the browns, the purples. I really love that colourway, and I thought, right, I had this earmarked for myself, so I had to rebuy it. But at £1 a ball, I ended up having 2 more balls just to fill up that price and make it worthwhile. So I got 2 balls of colour number 9, Dialot 1124, and it's blues and purples and blacks and greens and a lovely teal. It's going to be really, really nice. This one is earmarked for me as well. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I think they're going to be fairly simple vanilla socks, just rattled up for me, but that's absolutely fine. So that was me. 4 extra balls of yarn, which I don't really need, but it was either that or pay carriage. And I'm just too tight, too mean to pay carriage. From that point of view, I am like a traditional Scotsman. I squeak when I walk. I'm that tight, I'm tighter than a duck's bottom, and that's watertight. Anyway, that's that bit. Oh, there was one other finished object. The Mama and Baby socks, which I was working on last time you saw me. I finished both of the baby socks, so there are 2 of these dinky little chaps ready to go with the Mama and Baby socks that are going to my niece Megan. And they are absolutely gorgeous. I love them so much. And Megan's socks are almost finished as well. So that's another work in progress that I had forgotten. Oh no, I didn't. It's on the comfy chair bit. Oh, I'm losing my marbles. I should write down what I do in the comfy chair. I do it on a completely swing or ad hoc basis, so it is a bit of a nightmare. Right, that finishes that one off. Back over here for the last bit. I only do this so you get a change of angle in the conservatory, otherwise the background could be ultra boring instead of just boring. What's next? Well, as I said, a lot of the time that I've had used up recently has gone into my Perth Festival of Yarn class, my Perth Festival of Yarn website and social media work, talking to vendors, collecting their advertising information for the website, getting it up and getting information on the go. This week my project is to get the e-commerce section of the website up and ready to use, because it's almost time for us to announce a date for tickets going on sale. Hangnail. Tickets going on sale and class bookings opening. So watch the Perth Festival of the Yarn Facebook page, website, Instagram and Twitter accounts for dates coming out from Eva and myself. Eva, as director of the festival, has a calendar with all these dates on it, and we discussed them at some length last Wednesday when we had our Skype meeting, and I think plans are almost in place for the general public to start to get access to these things. I have some configuration and testing to finish this week. We have another meeting on Wednesday, and hopefully after that there will be some news for the rest of the world. But at the moment, my job is to promote the class I'm teaching. So I am getting ready to deliver what we've decided to call a top-down shawl design class. I'll be teaching on the Sunday afternoon, and there will only be 14 or 15 places. This is a conscious decision taken for all the festival classes to get them to roughly standardise at what suits most of the tutors. It also means that no matter what class you go to, you've got the same opportunity of getting time with tutors, which makes sense. So, what am I going to be doing? You know, why would people want to come and learn about shawl design from me? Well, my little blurb on the website says I've been knitting since I was knitting for 46 years. Learned at the age of 10 from my grandmother, which is perfectly true. And from my teenage years on, I've been contributing to the knitwear industry. Well, that's true as well, because as a late teenager, I did work hand knitting and doing little bits of design work for a shop, a yarn store in Glasgow. And since then, I have been creating designs for people as individuals as they've asked for them. I've never bothered to publish them up until the last year. Things have been one-off bespoke items for people. Occasionally somebody would come with a pre-written pattern that they wanted and I would knit for them. Whatever they wanted and whatever style they wanted, that was fine. I used to do it for money, and then I just did it for pleasure, for family and friends. And then for a long time I did it purely for the family. And I'm going to pause there because it's lunchtime. Back later. Well, I'm back from lunch. Sorry about the pause. That was Janet coming in at 1 PM for lunch, and we stopped and have lunch together. So a quick pause. I've forgotten where I was. Oh yeah, I was talking about the Hair Festival Yarn class. Talking to Eva, she had said go ahead and promote your own class if you wish, so I'm going to bung it in here and give a little bit of promotion. It's a top-down shawl design class. What objectives have I set for the class? This is me as a teacher of 20 years experience. What are my aims? What are my objectives? What do I hope that the people attending the class are going to go away with at the end of the day? What knowledge are they going to acquire? So my objective, my aim for the class is that all those who attend should leave with enough information to design and make their own shawl. The objectives within the class to let them get to that point are to introduce and discuss with them ways of generating different shawl shapes, to look at colour theory and the selection of colours to help design the shawl, to look at technique and textures to create technique that are going to decorate or adorn the shawl, and how to put those together to create the effect that you want. And the GoPro is just telling me that its battery has gone flat. I'm going to have to buy a spare battery for that thing. It's a pain in the tonsils. Yeah, it stopped recording, but I don't mind. I'll just finish it on here. So, have the skills and have to hand the knowledge you need to design and make your own shawl. That's the objective, that's the aim. The objectives: become familiar with ways of choosing pattern shape or developing pattern shape, ways of selecting and integrating different textures and techniques into your pattern. A quick input on chart mating. Let's put two charts together and make them blend. That would be part of it. But making charts from start, creating a chart that lets you plan how you hope something's going to look, test knitting or creating a swatch for that chart, and hopefully finally within that 3-hour section starting work on your own shawl. If people decide to bring with them the yarn that they think they would like to put into a shawl, by the end of the 3 hours they should be partway through the creation of their own shawl. It may take them another week, it may take them another 2 weeks, it may take some people a month to finish their shawl, but it might, you just don't know. No two individuals are going to be the same, but the idea is to create for people that flexibility to explore what's in their mind, explore their own ideas for what they would like in a shawl for themselves. I think when knitting happens, there are a lot of times when in the past I have gone, picked up a pre-written pattern, read it, knitted it, and tweaked or adjusted bits of it to suit me, to suit what I'm doing at that point in time. And that's normal. I would say 80% of knitters might do that at some point, maybe a higher percentage. I don't know, as a guess. But there's an awful lot of people out there who have ideas, and sometimes they are missing just that little bit of skill or a little bit of confidence to turn their ideas into something that they can actually use. So I want to try and do that for some people. What sort of things am I going to be providing to help them do that? Well, as I'm presenting information to them, obviously I'm going to do that using some kind of projected presentation. I have a small projector, I have a laptop. I'll soon project a small presentation onto a wall. If I need to take a screen with me, I'll take a screen with me. Doesn't really matter. We'll give the people the information. The slides that I put in my presentation, copies of those can be made available electronically or in hard copy if people warn us. I'll give them the sample shaping patterns that I want to discuss, so that they have a rough idea of how to create the shaping. I will have some chart examples of things which I have either produced myself in the past, or which are charts I've produced from old, and when I say old I mean things in excess of 70 years old, out of copyright patterns. And there are some things in traditional, if you go back to historical traditional lace pattern libraries and things, there's loads and loads of things out there which are available with no restricted copyright that people can dip into to help expand their knowledge. I'll also give them a couple of colour wheels, I think, because a lot of people understand colour theory really, really easily, and a lot of people can see things that are going to work well together. Some people see things they think are going to work well together, but when you actually produce them, they clash. Now, sometimes as a designer, that's what you want. You want the clash as well as the blend to create effect some days. But how do you know that's going to work? How do you know that the clash is going to be extreme enough or subtle? You know, you want it halfway between a soft blend and a hard clash. And having a colour wheel to hand is a nice way of reminding yourself of just where some colours sit on that wheel and what you think might work well next. But there are different colour wheels. There's a bog standard RGB colour wheel, which most of us know from school, but there's also the CMYK colour wheel, which is more commonly known by printers and graphic designers and artists, because a lot of people work with cyan, yellow and magenta rather than red, blue, green. So we will have a look. Red, yellow, red, yellow, blue even. So that's what I'm going to be providing, along with my expertise, my 46 years worth of knitting, and I hope that's going to be enough for people to say, let's go and share what this guy has to say. Let's have a look and see just what we can produce, and we might pick up something that we just haven't seen or done before. So that's fine. What do people bring with them? Well, they bring with them any yarn that they think they would like to include in a shawl. Now, whether it's full skeins of yarn, balls of yarn, whether it's minis, samples, whatever they think, that would be fine. And an appropriate circular needle to go with that type of yarn. So if you're turning up with double knitting yarn, you might bring a 4mm circular needle. If you want to bring long DPNs, bring long DPNs. I don't mind, it's entirely up to you. We don't tend to be working in the round for shawls, but that's fine as long as you've got a long, you can cope with a long set of knitting, then you'll be okay. The class is going to be 3 hours long. The inputs that I want to make should take about 30 minutes, and at the end of that 30 minutes I want people to be planning, creating their own charts and knitting as quickly as possible. So there's at least 2.5 hours worth of sort of designing and knitting time going in for people. I would anticipate that it won't be a long time between the end of my input. I mean, if I can keep it to 20 minutes, I haven't rehearsed it yet, if I can keep it to 20 minutes and leave a quick 10-15 minutes for thumbnail sketch designing, and then straight into some swatching, I'd be delighted. That would mean that at the end of an hour and a half, people should have enough information to be able to say, right, I want to put that, that and that together to create an effect, and they could start on a shawl. So it's up to the individual. If they want to spend all the time on swatching and sampling, they can. If they want to do some quick swatch sampling, choose a shape and actually do a little bit of development work on a project, then they can. I'm willing to be completely open and flexible with the folk who come to the class. So I hope I managed to pick up 14 attendees. It would be lovely to have 14 people look at how Beardychiel designs things and decide whether or not that's something that's going to suit them as individuals. I think the way I work, I think the way that I approach design work works really, really well for me. I'm from an engineering background, so forward planning I find really important. Rapid prototyping I find very, very useful. 3D modelling of any description, again, prototype modelling or actual finished item modelling, again, I find that really, really useful, and it's something which I do. So come and try it. Please come and try it. So that's that one. What else can I tell you about the festival? The number of vendors has gone up by another 2 today. Eva emailed me to say that there were a couple of names which she can't remember if she's given me. One of them I think I picked up. The other one I don't think I did, but if I add them to the list, the confirmed vendors list, it takes us above the 60 mark. So that's got to be good. More choice for everyone. I'm really looking forward to that. And that's it for this time. I have come to the end, and I will warn you all now that my next podcast will be short. And the reason for that is because Janet and I are heading off on holiday. So that's, just less than 2 weeks from now. So you'll get one that will go up just under 2 weeks from now. It won't be as long as this one. And it'll set you up for what I'm going to call the holiday shorts. Depending on data connection and Wi-Fi access while I'm away, I will do some filming. I will try and do some editing, possibly on a laptop. I may have to take a laptop with me. And if I get a chance, I will sit in the shade and I will edit some short clips of video and try and get them up onto YouTube while we're away. I could try and do it all on my phone. I don't know that that would work incredibly well for me. I like my video cameras. I like being able to mess around with what comes in. I've never edited the phone footage on my phone successfully. I find the editing software that's there a wee bit cumbersome for fat fingers. So I'll need to have a think about that one. In fact, I may have to have an experiment with some phone editing, so if you see an extra video go up between now and then about an unrelated topic, not necessarily knitting, it might be a bit of cooking, or it might be a bit of, I don't know, artwork or something. Maybe we'll do a little something on charts and designing. That would be fun. Just to try out what's happening. There we go. I'm signing off and I'm creating extra work for myself. What kind of man am I? But that's because I don't want to miss you while I'm away. We are planning, or we have booked 2 weeks in our favourite hotel in Greece on the island of Rhodes. And from there I will be in touch and let you know how the sun is going, how the relaxation is going, how the knitting's going, and possibly how the food and drink are going, because that's something I am really looking forward to. A change of diet for a couple of weeks, something fresher. I don't know, there's just something about when I go on holiday and I go to that particular location that the food really sits well with me. What can I say? I'm an old foodie at heart. It's not the best thing for my waistline, but hey, it's only for a couple of weeks and I am on holiday, so I'm going to enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. So from Beardychiel, for the time being, keep happy, keep healthy, cheerio.